250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app from either the iOS or Android App Store. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and smart TVs 2016 and forward.
It's a show with Obi and his rocking hat. If this was the 90s, he would be all there. It's me, my Scotch and I. Cause Obi is the guy. Obi is the guy.
Thank you, Michael Rochelle of the Shade Tree Mechanics, for our song, and for Rebecca and Justin Torrento for all the hard work they've been doing on our logos and soon to be seen backdrops. Simone Biles made news this week, and rightfully so, when she came for SportsCenter and their all-male GOAT image. Oh yeah, Serena was hidden in as an afterthought. Biles was right, and to highlight that, the Australian Open had a match between the GOAT, with all due respect to Navratilova. Serena played the baby GOAT, Osaka. In football, we made a huge deal about this, and in the end, the game was decided by 9 guys in the trenches. In tennis, these two were head-to-head with no one to help. Osaka, who has won all 4 Grand Slams she has reached in the quarterfinals, won again, has a chance 3 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow to go 5-5. I think it's time we gave this GOAT talk a break. When we talk team sports, I know MJ seemed to will his team to victory, but he did it with the help of Pippen, Cartwright, Kerr, and Rodman. James always makes sure he's surrounded by talented players. And who can blame him? Kevin Durant went to a team with 73 wins. Ali, Tyson, Rousey, and the Cyborg, they are in there alone with their lives literally on the line. They can claim to be the greatest. Tiger and Sornstrom, they had just a caddy to coach them and keep their heads right, but no one else could swing the club. Ty Cobb is number 2 all-time in WAR. Never won a World Series. Either did number 3, Bonds, or number 6, the splendid splinter, Ted Williams. The way our conversations are going lately, number 20 in WAR, 5-time World Series winner Derek Jeter, a great player in his own right, is considered better. Are 7 times NBA champs Luckstuff and Big Shot Horry better than MJ? Or better yet, would MJ have 6 without 5-time winner Kerr? For team sports, let's use accomplishments when talking about their winnings and championships and stop trying to figure out who is the greatest, especially as rules and criteria across eras are constantly changing. To help us with this is today's guest, Scott Churchson. We're going to take a deep dive into the NHL along the way. Scott's been an actor, person and voice actor for over a decade. Some of his credits include HBO's The Deuce, America's Got Talent, and commercials on MSG for the New Jersey Devils. He's the host of the Sports Den right here on Spanglish World Network and the creator of Uplifting Stories in a Minute, 1-minute news stories with a puppet and a green screen about average people making the world a better place. His attitude on life is a simple one. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you choose to respond to it. Let's see how he responds to my thoughts on GOATs. Scott?
All right. Obi, thank you, man, for being here. I'm excited about this, fired up about this, loving you running the show here. I'm excited by that. Here's the thing. First of all, let me start off by saying that GOAT is a term that's thrown around a lot. You and I will both agree on that. It's almost an argument piece more than an actual title, I think, because you talked about MJ initially on this. And the big question now, is it MJ? Is it LeBron? Literally on Wednesday, I had somebody explain to me why MJ was GOAT and not LeBron. And he cycled it down to the fact, how many NBA titles did LeBron lose? How many NBA titles did Jordan lose? The GOAT term is thrown around so much, like I said, as a conversation piece that it may have lost a little bit of magic, I think, in the process with this. I do think that LeBron has the potentiality to be the GOAT. I do not think he'll ever be as popular as Michael Jordan is, because that was special for its era. But I think the term GOAT, like you said, is thrown around, but it's just done so often that maybe the term itself has lost a little bit of its meaning, I think.
I agree there. And there's other terms that have kind of lost that. The Mount Rushmore, like really we're going to pick only 4. Or he's a top 5 quarterback, and yet you can name 6 that are better than him when you start your arguments. But you yourself can name the six, but you said five because you're trying to establish that tier.
Sure.
To me, I was more, in my mind, I don't mind the term, but I just feel that so often when we're talking about great athletes on team sports, we ignore the simplest, minutest thing that somebody else on that team is doing. And we forget about it. So when we start talking about MJ, we forget about everyone else who was involved in that. When we talk about Jeter, we don't. He's lucky in that way. Like we talk about all the great guys who are on there, and baseball is much better at that than other sports where you don't necessarily have to win. But in a lot of these team sports, specifically basketball and football, so much of your value over time goes to those championships, which have so many fluky things along the way. You know, Brady started his run with the tuck. I missed the end of that game. I saw the fumble. I went to sleep. And then I heard I was in an apartment. I heard my neighbor scream out, "No way that happened." And I knew, just based on the timing, that somehow the Patriots won. But then you talk about a guy like Ali, maybe Tyson's better. Well, at least, that's different eras, but still, they did it alone. Yeah, they had coaches, but when the push came to shove, it was them in there alone, making all of the decisions. Talk about some of the great women fighters now, Cyborg and Rousey. And you saw what happened to Rousey when she lost. I mean, and that's losing is important to in these sports to see where your mental toughness goes in the long run. And then we're talking, Jordan never lost the final in that conversation you had. And losing is important. LeBron never lost in the first round.
But see, that's the funny thing about it is that losing is important. And I think for Michael Jordan, being cut from his high school basketball team was that losing moment. He never lost in the finals because he lost early on, which I think is a good thing. It's part of the growth process there. But again, it's a term that people throw around a lot. Now, when you talked about, the fighting aspects of it, MMA, you're talking about boxing. Yes, you are in there alone. You might hear something, from your trainers in the corner, but it's you versus them. Or as Rocky put it in, I think it was Creed, it's you versus you. They're just in the way. So in this case, yes, when it comes to a lot of sports, I mean, you talk about Derek Jeter. Jeter, I don't forget how many all-star teams he had. I think like 14 or so. He had the 5 World Series there. But he had the team itself. Would he have been that good had he been on, say, the Royals team at that point, the Brewers team? Would he have been that good if he was with Pittsburgh? Mariano Rivera, greatest closer of all time. He was very nearly traded for Felix Fermin. George Steinbrenner wanted to trade him. His career would not have been the same had he not been in a position where he could have gone into the 9th inning, had basically the payroll, let's call it is, before him, having that setup team that he had, in the 90s, it was Nelson and Stanton. He had so many that were built in there. He had the teams that was able to give him the lead and allow him to have all of the saves that he had. So yes, he is the GOAT amongst relievers, but and I think he'll be the first one to admit it, he is not at all there without everybody else on that roster for 20 years.
And that's I like how you said the GOAT among relievers, because that's so important on team sports, especially with positional play, right? I can start to look position by position, and then at least a little bit have numbers to attribute. Okay, he did this in the field, he did this on offense, he did this on defense, whatever it may be. But it's hard when you start going quarterback versus a lineman. Lineman, nobody knows their names. And yet, like I said, we just watched the game. I wish we had known their names, at least the 5 guys who started the season, because that was a completely different crew. And that's what it came down to. Many years ago, I think I may have told this story on your show. The first time they let the fans vote for the MVP, Peyton Manning's first Super Bowl that he's going to go on to win. But the MVP of that game, to me, when I hate the one game MVP thing to begin with, was Jeff Saturday. He made so many blocks, got to the second level so many times, opened up holes for 2 running backs, protected Manning all game. And I knew I was going to be like one of maybe 1% of people who were going to want to vote for him. But hey, at least somebody was watching what he was doing. They didn't even give the fan the option of offensive linemen to vote for.
It is also a popularity contest in a lot of ways. If Jeter, for argument's sake, since we mentioned him, if he had played his entire career, say, in Texas, in Kansas City, in Milwaukee, smaller mid-sized market, he would not have had the recognition and credibility for his career. You know, you obviously had a great career. You know, you look at somebody like Craig Biggio, who had a really good career of his own, but Craig Biggio falls a little bit, I think, under the radar because of the fact that he played for a team that only went to the World Series once and got killed, frankly.
Yeah.
He didn't have the luxury of being in the, we'll say, call it what it is, the largest sports market in the country, maybe even in North America. You know, you have that behind you. You know, you have the looks, you have the charisma, you have all of this going for you. And as a result, you get the popularity part, which draws into the GOAT aspect of it as well. You know, I mean, Chipper Jones was another example. He had a great career down in Atlanta. People did recognize him because of the fact that Atlanta was a pretty well-known team with Smoltz, with Maddox, with everybody else, with Larry Cox managing that team for as long as he did. There was name recognition because there was team recognition as well.
I think that's a great point. If you had taken that entire Yankee team and they had done it in Milwaukee, you know, as soon as Torrey leaves, no one was going to hang around to watch them get that last one with Rodriguez. And you know, that would have been the end. They would have fallen apart. And it would even have been felt like it was the same team anymore because it'd be like, all right, the big names have left. And Jeter would have lost a little shine for sure. Yeah. Again, as I said, I just used a career WAR as an example, and he was still 20 in career WAR or something to that effect. So it's not like he was no good player at all. Just there was plenty of guys who never got that series, who you know did not, who don't get
Edgar
Martinez. They do get
Martinez.
the credit, but
I always loved Edgar Martinez, and people have a thing about the DH getting into the Hall of Fame. I think he deserved it.
Yeah, you know, and there's going to be a lot more DHs once the National League crumbles.
He broke him and I know you hate this, but him and Baines broke the trend there. But
no, I am one of those National League. I was just watching something on TV. I think it was Outside the Lines, but how the reason the National League doesn't have the DH is the owner of the Phillies was out fishing that day. That was the story it came down to in 1970 something. So. No, I don't. I've grown
it's a when,
like
not an if.
You know, 1 run per game, half a run per game was the difference in 2019 for the Dodgers and the #1 team in the American League. So the best offense in the National League was still a half a run behind because there was a guy out there who was bunting for an out. And when John Smoltz is done with it, I think we can all be done with it. Speaking of greatest, one sport we've avoided is one that still kind of has an undisputed greatest, and that's Mr. Gretzky in hockey.
Yes.
And
hockey today.
It is a hockey day.
It is a hockey day.
So hockey has been something to watch this season. It's full swing now.
Viewership is up.
Well, viewership is up. Yeah,
13%. It's up from this time last year, which is a huge thing.
That is a big spike, especially after the Super Bowl was not what it was hoped to be. So we know sports, keeping faces in front of the TV is important. It's been hit harder by the bubble, without not having a bubble than basketball. It's hit harder in some ways than even football was, after having been the shining example of how to use a bubble. Now they're putting in new measures in place, like guys who had the illness sit in between guys who haven't at lunch. What measures do you think have gone overboard, and what measures have not been enough?
You know, I think here's the weird part of this. I mean, looking at it from the perspective of the fact that my loyalty lies to a team that had literally 19 players on the COVID protocol, supposedly all starting with one. I think they're doing everything I think they can. They did make a mistake, and Buffalo was livid when the Devils played them right before the break happened, because of the fact that it was downplayed at least a little bit. And I think Buffalo had a point on this, where they're like, if you knew people had COVID, why did you have them play us? You know, nothing ended up coming from it. But I think overall, they're doing a decent job so far. You know, again, this is one of those things that it's not as easy doing a full season with all the teams as it was with the bubble last year, because this time around you got travel, you got a myriad of different things happening. But I think overall they've done a solid job. You know, the realignment of the divisions, the way that the teams are playing, and the way that they're doing a condensed schedule, I think is genius. I think it allows for a lot more. I'm going to go off topic for the COVID for a second. I'll come right back to it. But I think it allows a lot more chance to be able to show what a team is capable of, because everybody has the same schedule. They're all playing the same number of teams, the same number of times. Ironically enough, in certain cases, 3 or 4 times. The Devils are playing the Flyers 4 times in a row, and then in 2 months from now, they're playing the Rangers 4 times in a row. So that's bizarre as heck to me. But that's what you got to work with in the circumstance that you have. I think limiting travel, being able to keep all the Canadian teams up north, to handle COVID restrictions up there, I think is great. I'm a little surprised with certain things like the Central Division, where you have, the Blackhawks and the Red Wings, fine. But then you also have 2 teams from Florida as well. That's a pretty large travel distance right there. So they're working it out. They're making it work. And all in all, I think they're doing okay with it. I think it's still one of those things you have to adjust on the fly. It's still one of those things that you make tweaks along the way. But so far, more or less, aside from the Devils' massive hiccup, it hasn't been that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched the Blues and the Coyotes play umpteen games in a row. It was great. It was like you're watching a playoff series in the middle of the season, and it was spectacular to watch.
Yeah.
But speaking of your Devils, if I'm not mistaken, they've only played, as of this morning, 11 games. Everybody in Canada's played 15. So they got like 43 games in 82 days. That's one every other day. Is that something that's even sustainable? Is it worth trying to do? Should they go to another form besides just total points for figuring out the playoffs? How are you feeling about that?
Here's the thing. As a Devils fan, watching how they're doing so far, I'm all in. They came out of that break, they crushed the Rangers 5-2, and then went up to Boston, beat the best team in the division 3-2. Almost tied it. They almost walked away. That game almost went to overtime. They almost blew the lead. But in spite of that, they've done a lot with that. 43 games remaining. Like I said, you're going to have to crunch that down to, it's working itself out to kind of be like 6 games in 11 days. So there's going to be a couple back-to-back days in there. We're just going to have to deal with it because you lost 5 games in there. Fine. So be it. You manage it. I do think that one of the problems that I do have with the point system is when you have something this tight in a 56 game schedule, going into overtime with a loss is 1 point. The win is 2. In this kind of case, I think it would have almost been better if the overtime loss was 1 and the win of any sort would have been 3 points. Something to separate it a little bit more, because when you have an 82 game schedule, you can see some separation. This time you got 56 and all in a great big tight loop. So when I'm sitting there watching other teams, I'm not really rooting for one team to beat the other inside the East Division. I'm rooting for the teams to not go to overtime, just to make sure that it minimizes the amount of points that are given out, because this is the kind of thing that's going to basically, I think, become a problem towards the end of the season. Right now, borderline give or take 60 to 62 points in a 56 game season should basically get you into the playoffs. We'll say 62 will be a safe bet. How many of those points will come from overtime losses or shootout losses? And you end up backdooring your way into the playoffs because of that. Like I said, that's my biggest issue with the point system. And that was a problem I had with the point system, even when it was 80 games, even when it was a regular normal season. This time around, it's even more so.
I think, it's not something I looked at, so I'm not going to make a comment about how that math works out, but it does make sense that I agree, even when they went to the overtime and then the shootout, overtime win should be more than a shootout win because you got there in less time. And regular, I can see that. You can go 3-2-1. And then 0-1-1.
I mean, obviously the tiebreaker is, if based on wins, is natural wins or overtime wins, and then shootout wins underneath it. So shootout win will not have the same strength, even though it has the points, but in the tiebreaker, so that will make a difference there. But again, you're getting a team that basically goes into overtime and loses. They're only a point behind in every game, and that's the problem that I have with that system.
Yes, right. Because if you can get losses and wins in there, you're going to stay close as long as you get to overtime. Whereas
exactly,
losing, 3 seconds earlier is losing a whole lot more, right? I mean, if you can get your goalie off the ice and it all works out for you, you're in good shape. So from what I've been looking at, there hasn't been a lot of surprises with the way the season's gone. There's been some. The Rangers two rookies, not really working out quite yet, but the season's
give them
young.
time.
Arizona and Panthers are playing better than expected. But what surprises you the most about the season so far, and what surprised you the least?
What surprises? What's that?
Well, I mean, clear on the ice, not the coach.
What surprises me the least, for starters, is Toronto, the way that they've been playing. Vegas, I've been liking how they're operating. A little bit more. I'll get into that in a second. A little more off the beaten path. I think what surprised some people, but not necessarily me as much. You mentioned Florida. Joel Quenneville has taken that team when he took over last year, and that is a team now that has 22 points in 14 games. They've given the Panther fans actually a lot to be excited about, because Joel Quenneville has really started to build off of what Bob Bugner did previously and is taking it to a brand new level. Do I think they're going to win the division? No. I think that's still going to go to Tampa, because don't count out Tampa Bay at all. But do I see them getting to the playoffs? Absolutely. I see them being a second or even third place team. To a slight surprise, I'm surprised a little bit that the Buffalo Sabres are as low as they are. I expected them to be a little bit better right there with Eichel. They signed Taylor Hall to the contract. So seeing them struggling out of the gate is going to open up some very interesting questions, because they're struggling a lot at home. They do better on the road than they do at home. This is something I didn't really see necessarily happening with that tandem there. It's going to open up some questions at the deadline. If they're going to be sellers, do they trade Hall? Does he leave again? Does he get traded again? Do they trade Eichel? I mean, there's some questions. He's under contract for a lot of years now. I think for another 7 or 8 years at this point. He's only 24, but there's somebody's willing to take that contract on and give up the prospects. You know what? They've got somebody locked down for a long period of time. I will go out on a limb, and I will talk about the fact that the Rangers surprised me a little bit by the struggling that they've had post Lundqvist at this point. The Devils have done pretty damn well. I think it's been one of those things that they're 6-3-2 right now. Again, they went into Boston. They're 2-0-1 against Boston, I believe, is their record this year. Mackenzie Blackwood has the highest save percentage of any goalie in the NHL and is currently 5th right now in saves. So there's the possibility, albeit a very, very dark horse possibility, of him getting a Conn Smythe, but I don't see that actually happening. But there's a lot to be excited about in New Jersey, because most of the season that they've had has not had Nico Hischier in that lineup. That's a big deal then. You don't have, when you have your future captain that you signed for a long term deal not in your lineup, and you're still in the playoff hunt very, very strong. That's something there. I mentioned Vegas before. I mentioned also, I was going to say, Edmonton's doing pretty well, but Connor McDavid, here's the interesting thing about Connor McDavid. He currently leads the league in 32 points in 18 games, which is huge. But believe it or not, he's only a +2, which means he's been on ice when 30 goals were given up. If you're going to go in my particular situation, and this will make Eduardo and all of Toronto happy, my current MVP choice would be Mitch Marner. He is at 27 points. He is at a +16 right now, which is huge, because obviously he's on the ice. He's doing it well on both sides of it. But I like what they're doing right now. I like what I was going to say. I mentioned Vegas there. Marc-Andre Fleury has a 1.56 goals against. He leads the league there. So they're going to be riding a lot on him. Toronto, like I said, Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Joe Thornton. I mean, that is an offensive-minded team. I'm a little concerned about Toronto's goaltending a little bit. Right now, their starter is averaging 2.67 goals a game. So that could be a theoretical issue, but if they can shore that up, I will give you my prediction. The Stanley Cup goes to Toronto.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to, for now, with my amazing knowledge of hockey, I'm going to go with Vegas Golden Knights. They just
it's fair.
They between not just the goalie, but Shea coming back, being healthy again, Shea Theodore. I think that's a team that's going to be tough to score on and has some offense itself.
Right now their offense has been a little soft so far. They've been carried by Fleury, which is also a double concern where Fleury gets injured. What is that going to do for that team? But yeah, if they pop that offense back up, I see them actually, taking the West there.
Speaking of Vegas, we have an exciting outdoor weekend in Tahoe.
Yes, we do. I have some very direct opinions on this matter, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, I've just been looking at it. I mean, I know there's no fans. It's not in a stadium. It's on a golf course, but the pictures of the place are just straight up beautiful. There's rumors about how they're going to do this with drones and whatnot. Yeah. But before we get to games visually, what are you thinking about this move out to Tahoe?
Okay. By the way, first of all, do you have any pitchforks or torches handy?
I do not.
Okay. Anybody who's listening and basically likes outdoor hockey will probably want to get them for what I'm about to say. I hate outdoor hockey. I have hated it for a long time now. I've never been a fan of it. I know that they're working on some drone stuff, which admittedly I'm curious about tomorrow and Sunday, but players have always complained about the nature of the ice. They've been concerned about how soft the ice is, and they're concerned about injury. Now, in this particular case, most of the time it has been in places like New York or places that are mostly, for the most part, up north. This is Nevada. Temperature is going to be 38, 40 degrees. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it's a huge draw. I get that. It's a novelty, and I get that too. And don't get me wrong, it is a beautiful arena. They did a fantastic job with it. But I am concerned about somebody getting injured here, and I think it's one of those things that I think it's more of a matter of when, not if. And then they're going to be forced to have to reevaluate how some of this is, because if you listen to the complaints from the players, they don't like skating on it. It's a lot more difficult. And like I said, it digs a little deeper because it's more inclined to melt. And
that's really going to be a problem on Sunday's game. They're looking at in the mid 40s, which,
Mm-hmm. I mean, the highest temperature, I think, for any NHL outdoor game was 62. That was 5-6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I think it was. But again, I'm still really kind of concerned by this because all you need is one injury.
Yeah, and it's not hard. The ice melts too much, and that's
I mean, if Van Riemsdyk goes down on Sunday because of that, the entire Flyer offense goes down the tubes with it because they are so reliant on him to score. So that kind of thing is an example.
Yes, absolutely. So you've talked about the Hart Trophy, and let's hear I'm going to go more with everybody else is going with McDavid on that. I think you have an amazing point on the plus minus. But he's one of the few guys getting it done in power plays right now. And I think that's, special teams is one of the things that came out of the gate slow this season because of lack of practice, and he's getting it done there. So let's move on to the Norris Trophy. I already mentioned Shea Theodore. Who do you like there?
I mean, honestly, I do like him as well. I was looking at some of the candidates that are available right now. I mean, I'd love to say PK Subban, but that's not going to happen. Can we really say Roman Josi can repeat? I don't know. I'd like to see PK Subban have a rebound year. I don't know. Right now, who was I looking at with that? I think Toronto's got a couple of players that are available for something like this. I don't know. Right now, I think it's a little too open to be able to be sure on this. Let me hit you back on that in a couple of weeks, and then I'll get back to you on that.
This is definitely the way too early. Too early. We might as well just picked it before the season started. Speaking of before the season started, and maybe even before his career gets started, Fernando Tatis just signed a deal that is mind-blowing.
I have opinions on this one as well.
Just to hedge it just a little bit, it is only $24.3 million a year.
That's part of it.
Which puts him not below the highest paid player at every position right now. It's 14 years. It's 1 year shorter than what remains for Bobby Bonilla. And it's long. And my only concern is if he's Greg Jeffries. That's my only concern. If he can play for 14 years, in 14 years, $24 million is going to be nothing for a guy who's had a career that is that long, even if he's on his way down, which he probably won't be. Your thoughts on this deal?
I think it's worth the risk. I personally, looking at it as having a soft spot for the Padres for as long as I have, I love this deal. They had to do something to keep pace with the Dodgers. You know, I mean, it's an ironic thing that, you know, the Padres get Blake Snell, they get Yu Darvish, and are still outshined in the pitching department in the NL West. You know, with what has happened with the Dodgers, with, you know, with Bauer, they have a need there to get a splash. You know, Tatis, though, what's unique about this is Tatis is only 22, which I think has more pros than cons, and like I said, is worth the risk, because it can't believe I'm saying this for a deal that's actually over $1/3 billion. This is a team-friendly deal, you know, because you mentioned it. It's under $25 million a year here, and he's going to be 36 when he's a free agent. Now, looking at this from a couple different perspectives, Mookie Betts, who signed the 12-year deal with the Dodgers, he is going to be 40 years old in 2033 when he's a free agent. They are paying him right now an average of $30 million a year. Mike Trout, also, you know, in Anaheim, he is right now under contract until the age of 38 on an average deal of $35 million a year. So if you look at those two versus what Tatis can bring to the table, you got two guys there that are going to be, frankly, old when they're getting $35 million a year. Will Tatis's numbers drop in his 30s? Yes, it probably will. But you're getting probably a good 9-10 years out of this guy, you know, before that contract starts to become a little bit more of a burden. I do not see this contract in any way being like, as a Yankee fan, the Giancarlo Stanton deal. You know, I don't see Tatis being injured like that. But you have somebody right now who is going to sell tickets. He's going to sell merchandise. And it's something that can keep them competitive with the Dodgers, who now have become the evil empire and have an explosive payroll. This year alone, they've got $103 million lined up amongst 3 starting pitchers. So you need an offensive threat to offset that. Tatis is one of those guys.
You know, you brought up many of the same points I had here. The only other thing I want to add to this is, and you said the names, Tatis, Betts, and Trout, 3 largest contracts by total value. They were all signed as extensions. Harper's number 4. He was the free agent. We've heard talks, are they colluding? What's going on? Free agency is so slow. What's happening? Owners are starting to say, I'm going to give my money to my guys earlier. They're starting to reward performance at home, getting that legendary hometown discount, but getting it before. I mean, Tatis said, 2 more years before he could even get arbitration? Like,
lock him in now.
He had a moment to get angry at them.
Yeah.
They gave him this deal. And it's going to cost, you know, if he's the player they think he's going to be, he's probably left $100 million on the table.
Agreed. And, you know, I do see the cons of this being, like you mentioned Greg Jeffries as an example. And I remember I loved Greg Jeffries when he came up in 86, you know, in his time with 87 and even 88. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be Greg Jeffries. But my concern is, now that the dude has gotten paid, is that going to change how he handles certain things? You know, he's like I said, this is more money in a year than most people ever get in their lifetime. When I was 22 years old, I was working at a bank for $7.50 an hour. This dude's got $24 million this year alone. And will that change how he handles certain things? Will he be under pressure of trying to perform to that contract, which is a very known issue for players when they actually sign big deals? They have the pressure of trying to live up to the expectation of it. He might have to deal with that. Ironically enough, I think being in a slightly smaller market will help. And SoCal is a pretty laid back environment down there. I think that'll help a lot when it comes to how he performs, because if he had that kind of contract in LA or New York, I think the news outlets would expect a lot more from him and it'd be a lot more pressure. I think being in a smaller market will help him, but at the same
I agree. I think that small market is definitely a nice thing for him. It's going to allow him to
risk that he might not live up to the contract. What's that? I lost you for a sec. Say again.
That's okay. I don't know who lost too. I was totally agreeing with you that this is an advantage to these small markets. It's, you know, what Trout chose too. Like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to take probably less money than I could if I waited in a small. And Anaheim is not tiny, but it's not a baseball market like New York, like Boston, like LA. That's the Dodgers that's going to eat you up and spit you out if you don't perform.
Yeah,
St.
you see
Louis,
what happens here in New York.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you see what Sonny Gray did a couple of killing it now in he killed it well in Oakland. He did, you know, he's done well with, you know, he did well with Cincinnati, but in New York he bombed because it's just a different mindset here, and you know that. I think part of the reason why, and you mentioned this earlier, in the old days, yeah, you used to sign a guy immediately, bam. But now I think as contracts have gotten larger, owners have a little more trepidation about dropping that kind of money. The era of the George Steinbrenner type owner is honestly behind, I think possibly permanently, you know, where you're going to have that guy who's like, I want Randy Johnson. What do we got to do? How much, you know, what do we got to trade to get him? What do we got to pay to get him? You know, that's where I think a lot of owners no longer are operating from. And that's where I think going forward, you're going to see a lot more slow moving. I mean, the Yankees just signed Brett Gardner, finally just signed the guy. You know, we're into spring training at this point, and they just brought him in for $4 million, you know, and that was a guy that's only $4 million, you know, so there's a lot more maybe anxiety about dropping money now than there would have been a bunch of years ago, because you're dealing with contracts that now are bigger than what payrolls used to be 20 years ago for an entire team.
Absolutely. So we're going to change directions completely here. I don't even have a good seg.
That worked well enough, I think.
We are going to move to the fashion portion of our show.
Okay.
We're going to start with one of the great hat wearers of all time.
Okay.
Hockey, a hockey icon. Hopefully this will work. Yes, it looks like we're getting it. And we are going to start with Willie O'Ree.
Yes.
Willie O'Ree. I know who he is. I found out this month.
Mm-hmm.
Willie O'Ree broke the color barrier in hockey.
He did.
Definitely a different sport, because unlike Major League Baseball, when somebody called him words, he had recourse.
Yes.
And he was known to take it when he had to. But he's also a great hat wearer. As you can see in this picture.
He kind of does rock the Stetson there, yes.
Yes, he does. He's got a beautiful hat, a gorgeous pinstripe suit, carries the sticks well. What are your thoughts on Mr. O'Ree's outfit here?
You know what? I'm digging the button up top. I love the tie. Better. I think it's a better tie than I've got. I'm pretty like bland today. I'm very corporate, I feel. Let's say, the shoes are nice. The ring is nice. The glasses, the shade adds a lot to it. He's got a very like Memphis blues feel to him.
Yes.
I'm kind of digging that.
You could definitely replace that hockey stick with a guitar and it would still work.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
You know, I mean, you mentioned Mike Rochelle at the top of the show. You cut Mike Rochelle's hair. He kind of looks like that, to be honest with you.
Excellent. we got another one. We actually have two of this outfit because it was hard to get.
I like the other one better.
Oh, already. Not even waiting for me to get the second picture of this outfit up for you.
Based on when you saw him. Yeah, see, I mean, I like the tie better on this one, but I liked the overall look on the other one better. The gray Stetson, I don't think works as well there. The NHL pin is a nice touch. I like the NHL pin. Again, he's got the ring down below.
Yeah, I love this tie.
That tie is awesome. That tie rocks.
Takes this outfit above the pinstripes. The pinstripe is more of a classic outfit for sure. Like you said, it handles that blue situation, but this tie is just killing it for me. Now, I think this picture, I did not know what you were going to say earlier today, but when you see it, you'll know why I was happy with what you had to say. Oh, we're not getting this.
Now, okay, and this part here, I mean, I like the little bulb at the top of the head there. I mean, he looks kind of sad, and actually, he looks kind of, honestly, I always hate the sad little robot there. But all in all, I mean, he doesn't quite look like Willie, but I don't know, maybe. You're gonna go to PK Subban here. Okay.
Well, let me see if I can find this picture. This was a great one because it's the two of them together.
Oh, nice.
And nice. I'm just gonna give it a minute, and then I'm gonna go to the next guy if I can't find this picture of them together, which was just, I'm so excited when you brought him up. I was like, perfect.
PK Subban is a good looking dude.
And I'm not gonna make myself crazy about that. In addition to Willie,
Mhm.
This week there was actual sports news around fashion, as Mr. Cam
Mhm.
Newton expressed the fact that he has spent $1 million on clothes he's probably only worn once. So we're going to take a trip down Cam's memory lane.
All right.
And here he is in his Heisman. We know where he ended up. We can see it starting to get there with a little bit of color in his gorgeous little jacket square,
Mhm.
pocket square.
The tie's nice too.
Tie coordinates
The
with
tie,
it.
the tie and the pocket square match really nicely too.
Absolutely. Like, this is a guy who was well aware that he was into fashion at a young age, but this is about as conservative as I think we're going to see on him. So we go a little later.
Yeah, I see. I don't think the hat.
That is a massive hat.
Nah.
I know, as a guy who wears hats, I'm not sure. I love Cam's hats, obviously. His collection of hats blows me away, but this one is a little tall, a little too Tengalny, but I love the jeans.
Mhm.
Never.
The bling is nice too. The shirt matches well too.
Yeah,
It's got a whole Southwestern vibe to the whole thing, I feel.
absolutely. I wish the cowboy hat was more traditional of a cowboy hat, but you know, it's a great outfit, and it coordinates with the guy sitting next to him. Look at that.
That's true. Good point. So, all right. What else we got?
And
Oh yeah. Okay.
This is much more Cam now.
Yeah, I don't. Well, for starters, I don't think I could pull that off. That's for dang sure.
Well,
I don't. And here's the thing: I don't think the tie necessarily works with the suit. The checkered suit could possibly be pulled off with a different hat, but I feel like I don't know. I don't feel like the outfit totally works. The shoes could match the hat, I think, but that middle section right there, I think it takes away from the ensemble. I do.
I think that is a great point. I kind of think the tie and the hat work, and the hat and the suit shoes work. But like you said, that tie is too solid of a color, and I could never wear that kind of pant leg.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable.
Also pointing at the fact he's showing ankle on that too.
Yes, I mean that is something that a lot of guys can do, but never me. I mean, I think I could wear that hat. I love the hat. I mean, but
Stetsons are cool.
Yes, fedoras. I'm gonna help you out. Stetson's a brand here.
That's a Doctor Who reference, though.
Yeah, let's see. That's oh my goodness, that's a fez. I love a fez.
Well, fezes are cool. Bow ties too.
Bow ties and fezzes. Never be cruel. So now we are going to move to the last part of our show.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to start to enjoy our drinks. I know we talked about this together without everyone, but we're going to do some Canadian whiskeys.
All right. Very good.
The first whiskey I have here is a little Ellington Reserve,
Not
8-year Canadian whiskey. It's a premium Canadian whiskey, aged to perfection in charred oak barrels for 8 years.
Interesting.
It supposedly produces a smooth, mellow flavor for discerning whiskey connoisseurs.
I have never had it before, but first time out.
Me either. Neither of these whiskeys from Canada have I tried before.
Not bad. I was expecting it to burn a little bit more than it did.
I was given word that this was a much harsher whiskey than it was. I was expecting
to be a little harder there too.
Yes, I wouldn't give it a full mellow flavor.
Well, compared to what I was prepping for.
Yes, I was really expecting much stronger based on some of the feedback some of our fans were giving us when we let them know this is what we were drinking. Overall, it's a good whiskey.
It's 80 proof, so you'd think it actually would have a little more kick to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is definitely going to make it into our house blend.
Nice.
I'll be adding that after the show. For those of you who don't know, someday there will not be a pandemic, and the show will be done in person, and we will be sharing the house blend as one of the drinks every time as it grows. Now we're gonna put this aside. I'm not saying I'm gonna not finish it. Just we have some show to get through.
All right.
So we're gonna pull up the J.P. Wiser's Spiced Vanilla Whiskey. This is full-bodied flavors of sweet caramel, toffee, dried fruit, rounded off with a pleasant vanilla and a sweet, pleasant finish.
Hmm.
This is a lot lighter than the last one.
Cheers.
Mm.
Now see that one.
It burns more.
Yeah,
yet somehow it's more mellow. Like I don't know how to
The vanilla, I think, keeps it mellow, but yeah, it does burn a little bit more than the Ellington.
Yes, but the spice sweet of which it talks about, it almost tastes like a bourbon in its sweet. Okay. So before we go on, let's change and get our last drink in.
Very good. You and I are going different paths on this one.
Yeah. Yes. How can you give us a little bit brief information on your 1 minute show that I know you do, and I know you're very proud of it. It's in your sports world, but let's talk about that for a minute.
All right. So basically, uplifting stories in a minute is what I kind of refer to as life therapy. You know, with everything that's been going on in the world, everything that you look at on social media and the news is just negative stuff. I had this puppet that's been sitting around, and I had the green screen. So I came up with uplifting stories in a minute, which are just short daily 1 minute videos about the little kid that saved, basically put a fundraiser together for $4,000 to eliminate student meal debt, you know, or the principal that went back to school. Principal that went back to work overnight shifts at Walmart and gave the money to impoverished families. The show that I did, or the episode that I did for tonight, was scientists in Japan have come up with an AI that can predict tsunamis and what they're going to do in real time, which will allow emergency response to respond more quickly anywhere around the globe as tsunamis and as earthquakes are happening. So these are just short, quick stories about just average people, frankly, just making the world a better place. And it's gotten a really good response. I'm actually happy for that. But I also see it as my own kind of life therapy, because the news and social media depresses me. This helps offset that.
Yeah, well, we know that to get, even like you said, a 1 minute story in a news show of the good news is once a week if you're lucky.
It's at the end of the broadcast.
Right. When you're changing the channel to go to the next news show with all the bad news, it's like, oh, you missed it. And you're doing this with a puppet in a green screen.
Yes. Doing puppet in a green screen. I relaunched the channel about a month ago. I originally started it out with just myself, but then I had Herb Herbansky is his name. And I just started rolling with him. And like I said, the response has been really good. I will have to change out his outfits. I don't know if you know this, may as well say this. I had a bird in my basement today. So when I came down here to record one of the episodes, there's a bird flying around. I don't know how long it's been here, but ironically enough, it had been around long enough that it had to take care of its own business. So now I have to wash Herb's shirt. Bottom.
Of all the things he could get to, the one guy who's giving news to everybody, he literally.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? I mean, it's a giant spot like right here. But you know what? All his clothes are like size for like a size 2-year-old. So I'll just throw it in the wash. I'll take care of it. It won't be that big of a deal.
Beautiful.
But it's just the oddity of the fact that it's like this one giant white spot on a blue shirt right here.
You know, yes. Has the bird ever gotten you?
No. Yes. And I do not believe in the whole thing about how it's going to bring you good luck. I don't believe that. Maybe from the standpoint that your day can only get better. But there were times that I would get on the train, New Jersey Transit, like in Waldwick at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, right on your shoulder. And you're just like, all right, so this is how my day is starting.
Yeah. I've had a lot of near hits. You know, I don't like that term near miss. I don't know what that means, but I've had a lot of near hits. The closest was the guy standing next to me, literally shoulder to shoulder, got it right there. I was like, whoa, glad it was you, not me.
I think
my day better.
2, maybe 3 times in my life. I know definitely 2, maybe a third in there. What are you going to do? It's part of life. You know, again, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you deal with it.
Absolutely. You know what? It's one of those things that you guys just take as being funny and hope you don't have to wear that suit all day.
Yeah.
So usually we try to match up all our drinks throughout the show, but
thank you.
You made a request of what you wanted your third drink to be.
I did.
You asked if it could be the Glenlivet for your father-in-law, and unfortunately, both of us lost our father-in-laws within the last 2 months.
Yeah.
So my initial plan was to go with the Glenlivet. But I decided that I was going to do something a little different. But first, while you pour your Glenlivet for everybody, it's supposed to be smooth, fruity, complex, sophisticated.
It was my father-in-law's favorite drink. So in this case, in honor of Ray, who, by the way, was the drummer for Shade Tree Mechanics. That's how you and I got to know Mike Rochelle. He was the drummer for that band for 20 plus years and was able to perform down in Memphis, representing New Jersey for the International Blues Competition. So that was a cool experience a couple of years ago. Really nice guy, very caring, good friend, good attitude. Just honestly, just a good-hearted guy. And it was just spontaneous, just like that. I was thinking about having to come down here and record. And then I got a phone call from my wife that basically was pretty much all over. So that was 3 weeks ago yesterday.
Wow. And was that in Memphis in May when you went down to Memphis?
That was Memphis 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, we went down. That was the last time they had the blues competition, I think. So it was, Memphis is a great city, very laid back. I'm not a real big fried chicken fan, which unfortunately is a problem for that environment, but it's a really chill place. The people get along. And like I said, if you love blues, my God, that is the place to go. Yes,
I've been to Memphis, probably other than New York and Philly, which I live by, the city I've been to the most. Some of your classmates migrated down to Memphis, and I used to visit.
Interesting.
them.
Okay.
I'm not going to name names. They know who they are. And
We'll talk afterwards. I'm kind of curious myself.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A good number of people from our age group, about 6 or 7, maybe even more, migrated down there. Now, my father-in-law, he was a teetotaler.
Okay.
His favorite drink was the Arnold Palmer.
Okay.
To be honest, the way the story has been relayed to me is my mother-in-law loved tea, not so much. So he insisted on adding the lemonade. He was a huge sports fan. From the day I met him, almost every one of our conversations were in front of a TV while watching the game. Loved the Lakers, loved Tiger. Last Winter Olympics, him and I were loving the hockey. Always on, no matter what. He knew the story of whatever the sport that ended up on that TV was. He knew the teams, the players, college players, and all. But always having in-depth conversations with you while you were watching, always asking the questions that got right to the heart of the matter, and never judging you when you gave the answers. These are answers that affected his daughter and his grandchildren, and he was, yeah, that works for me. So, I miss you, Earl, and to father-in-laws.
Yes. Cheers.
Now, just a reminder to everyone, you can catch us, this show on Zingo TV. Oh my goodness, I lost my closing read. Scott, why don't you deliver that?
All right. This show is available on Zingo TV channel 250, available on 35 platforms through the Spanglish Sports World Radio Network. Across 4 continents, we figured that one out, which is pretty cool. And back to you, I guess.
No, thank you very much for that save.
Yeah, no problem. We work together, right?
Yes. So we've covered all the things that we had to talk about, other than possibly Simone Biles. I don't know if you had anything specific you wanted to say on her as opposed to GOATs.
The only thing I'll say on that is I was surprised by ESPN's move there. I think personally, I think it was an accident. I don't think it was deliberate. ESPN, being a subsidiary of Disney and the Mouseketeers, they've always tried to push and not push is a bad word, but promote progressiveness. So the fact that this happened, Simone was right to call him out on this, but it was a surprise move that I think personally was just an honest glitch by somebody who just sent it out and probably got reamed out for it. Simple as that.
I agree, because from the story as I've read it and unfolded it, somebody drew a picture. It got tweeted out, and in between by SportsCenter, and in between the time the artist did the original picture and it got tweeted, one of his friends must have come to him and said something. Yeah. Because Serena's not in the original, and it is in the one that's tweeted. And SportsCenter, kind of like you or me, saw a cool picture and said, "Let me share that." And some poor He's probably the same guy who works for the Cowboys and left Dak out. He got fired from that job, got picked up by ESPN, and now he's getting fired again.
So yeah. Thank you again, man. I appreciate. Looking forward to you on the Sports Den. I'd like to have you on Tales from the Film Set as well. I'm sure I got a couple of stories for you on that one. And I'm sure you may have a story or two for me as well.
Yes, that would be fun. You're really making me
Oh yeah,
get to work. I appreciate it. And let me not just thank you only for coming on, but for giving me my start here. Like, I responded to a Facebook post by you.
That's
I
true.
took the call. I'm like, I've never done this, and I got the phone and I was like, okay, guess someday he'll call, and then you did.
And how many times did you help me with a square knot, timber hitch, or 2/2 hitch? It evens itself out. But no, thank you, man. You've been awesome. I love having you on. I love having you on.
Oh, and I really appreciate you coming through for us tonight. We all loved it. And with that, I think we're done. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Take care. Be good.
You too.